Arizona Wildcats getting set to host USC tomorrow night on ESPN2 in the late game, 9:30 Central, I think, the kickoff here for folks watching in Alabama. And that's where ESPN's Adam Amin is in Tucson in the desert. He joins us this morning, and we appreciate it as always, especially getting up early to be with us here on the radio after I know you flew in and trying to get prep done and all that. I really appreciate it, Adam.
No worries, Gary. It's Friday. We got to get ready for college football this weekend, man.
We do, and we're pumped up. And, you got an interesting game because, let's be honest, neither one of these teams' seasons have gone the way that they would have liked for them to have gone to this point. Arizona with Kevin Sumlin, they really lost a tough one against BYU to get it started, got blown out at Houston. Have come back with a couple of wins over Southern Utah and then a Pac-12 win against Oregon State. And for USC, I think I expected more out of them anyway than what they've done to this point. But this is a conference game. The winner gets some momentum, gets to feel good about themselves, while the loser really could be in a hole. Just to handicap this matchup you've got tomorrow night.
Yeah, winner gets the first of two wins in the Pac-12 South, and that's basically the storyline we came in with at the beginning of the season about the Pac-12. So one thing I want people in Tuscaloosa to know about the Pac-12. I feel like this is something you guys should appreciate in SEC country. The coaches in the SEC do a great job of pushing the narrative of the conference. Well, what's the narrative you hear every week, Gary? Nick probably says it before every SEC opponent that he faces. When we go to College Station, it's one of the toughest places in the country to play. When we go to Lexington, y'all don't understand how tough it is to play in Lexington, Kentucky. You guys don't really understand. It doesn't matter how bad Tennessee is. The rivalry, you can throw the records out the window. That's the narrative in the SEC. No matter what game you play, no matter what team you play, no matter what coach you're playing, it's a hard matchup. And whether that's true or not true, it doesn't really matter. I think it is true. I think playing in the SEC, just about every week, you're going to get a challenge in some capacity. And I think that's something that the Pac-12 coaches need to do a better job of, but I do think that they're doing a better job of it. And it's going to take some time with all the new head coaches that are in the Pac-12 this year, 5 new head coaches in this conference. But these are going to be fights. These are going to be difficult games every week. I don't think it's going to be blowout territory every week in the Pac-12. I just don't. I think Stanford's really good in the North. I think Washington's obviously excellent as fans in the SEC have gotten exposed to in the last couple of years. They know how good Washington is. I don't think they realize how hard it is to go up to Pullman and play at Washington State. I don't think they realize how hard it is to go to Salt Lake City and play on the road against that Utah team. So I think that's something that we want to see more of if you're a Pac-12 fan. I know people out west want to see more of it, is understanding that the narrative is that it is a hard game every week. It is a difficult game plan every week because of all these high-quality coaches that have entered. And this is an important game with USC and Arizona in an open division. The Pac-12 South is wide open this year. Tomorrow is a really important game.
Oh, no doubt about it. It's a big game. We're going to get to the SEC in just a moment. Obviously, a game that a lot of people are not excited about here in Tuscaloosa. We'll touch on it. But I want to get to the ACC because last night I think we saw Miami, even though they got hammered by LSU in that opener, they've rebounded. They've still got an opportunity in their conference. But for North Carolina, and I like Larry Fedora a lot. I think he's a good coach. I thought the season he had at Southern Miss was unbelievable. But you're starting to wonder, at least I am, if it's just going to happen for him at North Carolina. I know this is a basketball school. They've had some good football teams down through the years, but this is a program that seems to be trending in the wrong direction, and I just don't know if he's going to be able to get it done there. What do you think about Fedora in North Carolina going forward, Adam?
Yeah, I'm not sure how long the leash is going to be at this point. Bizarre comments about the war on football or whatever aside, I just haven't seen anything positive from North Carolina the last couple of seasons. Larry Fedora is one of the great offensive coaches in college football. And for a couple of years, he really did have a rolling. And this was one of the best teams in their division for a couple of seasons. When Mitch Trubisky was there, before that Marcus Williams was there, there were some good quarterbacks, some really good receivers. This is one of the better offensive teams in college football. And I just haven't seen it. That tells me that the recruiting the last couple of years has just been bad. So if that's the case, when recruiting is the lifeblood of your program, And there was a period where it was really good, and now there's a period where it just isn't. You gotta have some questions about this. 6 turnovers last night. They had goal to goal a couple of times, and they scored, I think, 1 field goal in that stretch. I mean, this is bad right now, and I'm not sure what it's going to take. I don't know who's going to be next in line for a head coaching job out of, let's say, a good group of 5 university that's going to want to take the North Carolina job. Like if I'm Josh Heupel, am I going to want to leave UCF to go to North Carolina right now? I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be the case right now. So I think it's a tough place to go. It's a tough place to coach right now. The ACC is good. It's been good for the last several years, especially with Clemson. You got to deal with and contend with Clemson on the other side of the Atlantic Division right now. So it's not an easy job, but Larry Fedora's quality has kind of tailed off the last few years, especially on the recruiting end.
Alabama gets the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, formerly Louisiana Lafayette, formerly Southwestern Louisiana, tomorrow morning. Billy Napier, former wide receivers coach at Alabama, former offensive coordinator at Arizona State last season, brings in the Raging Cajuns. It's a 49-50 point spread. So I'm not even going to ask you about the game. I do want to ask you about Tua Tagovailoa and not just his play, but the way this quarterback situation has been handled with he and Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts embracing a backup role, which surprised many. And we'll get to Kelly Bryant Clemson in a moment. But has Tua played maybe even better than you expected? And how surprised are you that Jalen Hurts has stayed here and agreed basically to be the backup quarterback, although I do think he's improving under Dan Enos and Mike Locksley? Just the way this entire quarterback scenario played out, your thoughts on that, and just how good Tua really is.
I think I'll start with Tua. I think he's great. I think he's the best. Right now, the most efficient and the highest quality quarterback in college football. That doesn't mean he's the best NFL prospect right now, and obviously he's not eligible yet anyway. But right now, he's the best college quarterback. And it's funny how we talk about this with Alabama, because the last several years, I feel like I've been saying that. I think I remember telling you the last couple of years that if you had to give me a choice of one quarterback to go win me a big game, Jalen was right at the top of that list the last couple of seasons. Big game experience, poised, still was young, had a lot of potential in front of him. And now I look at what Tua's doing. I think he's better than what Jalen was giving, and that's no disrespect against Jalen. That just speaks so highly about what Tua has done in this very small sample size, yes, but still in an important sample size. And I didn't expect this. I didn't expect this level of efficiency, this level of quality, not this quickly. I knew he was good. I did his debut. We were there when Fresno State came in last year, Gary. You and I got to see him play in a game. And thought, all right, there's some tools there, though. The arm is there. The talent with the legs is obviously there. But, I mean, it's just incredible to watch the level of efficiency with which he's playing. So I don't know how much I expected this. And I love what Nick said about Jalen the other day. Speaks volumes about his character and what type of guy he is. And I'm not going to fault the guy for transferring. I'm just not. And yeah, I agree with what Barrett Jones said the other day that, this might basically just turn into the 4 and done. And it's for, you play your 4 games and see where you're at, and I'm with him. I'm an old fashioned guy in that sense where, listen, if you make a commitment for that season, I think you should play out that season. But I'm not going to fault the guy if he wants to go. And Mike Gundy said that about Jalen McCleskey, one of his top receivers the last several years. He wants to go after 4 games and say, you know what, I'm not in control of this kid. I don't get to choose what he does. And Mike said that to us in as many words a couple of weeks ago when we sat down with him. So I know we touched a lot of subjects there, Tua and Jalen and some of the transfer stuff, but I like the fact that Jalen's staying. I think it does speak highly of his character. I think he'll be the most sought-after college football recruit next year by far. But I didn't expect things to play out the way they have, and I commend all parties involved for how it's been handled thus far.
At Clemson, it's played out differently. Of course, a big difference here is that Kelly Bryant started the season as the starting quarterback, started the first 4 games, led them to a big win at Texas A&M with help from Trevor Lawrence. Jalen Hurts, of course, started the season as the backup to getting the start against Louisville. So there's a difference there. But similar scenarios in the sense that Kelly Bryant had a 16-2 record as a starter, said this week to the Greenville News that he felt like it was a slap in the face. He didn't feel like he had done anything to lose his job. Dabo Swinney informed him on Monday that Trevor Lawrence was being installed as the starter. Kelly Bryant immediately basically announced that he was transferring. Now, another difference is he's a senior, and as you said, Jalen's a junior. But your thoughts on the Clemson situation, how it's been handled there versus the way it was handled at Alabama, and were you surprised that Kelly Bryant immediately announced that he's going to transfer and play next season somewhere else?
Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm a guy who, when you make a commitment to the team that season, I feel like you should play it out. That's my druthers. That's my preference. I think that that's important in terms of just kind of an old school, kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I guess mentality. That's a principle, I think, of kind of riding out, your situation. I think that's important just in growth as a human being. But like I said, I'm not trying to play in the NFL. I'm not trying to get my opportunity to set up the next 15 years of my life professionally. And if my profession is playing in the NFL for the next 15 years, and I don't think I can do that by being a backup at Clemson, then I got to go somewhere. And I talked to Blake Barnett a couple of weeks ago when we did that South Florida game, former Alabama #1 recruit. And he said, I had no intention of leaving Alabama when I got there, but I also have dreams to play in the NFL. And when you are told, and this is I don't think this is a hit against Nick Saban either, and I don't think this is necessarily a hit against Dabo Swinney. I think this is just kind of the culture that college football recruiting is seeped in, where you basically have to tell a kid, we believe you're good enough to play in the NFL. If you play here, you're going to get that chance. But then that coach also has a lot of money, a lot riding on that season. Wins and losses matter in big-time college football. And at some point, you may not be the guy. And if you're in a situation where you only have 3 to 5 years to set up the next 15 years of your life, and you think you got a better shot of maximizing those 15 years if you take those 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years somewhere else, I'm not going to fault a kid for that. I don't have it in me. Not in an era where Nick Saban's making $8 to $11 million a year. In an era where Urban Meyer, who just went through this this dog and pony show of wordplay and misspeaking and this ordeal where we have a terrible Courtney Smith situation. He just kind of walked through that and didn't really get much, punitive damage to him. He's sitting there making $7-8 million a year. And if he walks out or gets fired for cause, he walks out with a pretty big check anyway. And he's not starving. But what about all those kids that he promised, that would play in the NFL if they came to Ohio State? So, again, it's a very large situation with Kelly Bryant. It's part of a larger scenario. I know this is a really overarching big-picture topic, and it might be an oversimplified way to look at it. But coaches make a lot of money and have a lot more freedom than players do right now. I'm not going to fault the player who's got 3 to 5 years to potentially figure out the next 10 to 15 of his life. I'm not going to fault the kid for it. I'm just not.
I'm with you. A couple interesting SEC games. I want to start with South Carolina, Kentucky, because you know how it is when you get on a team and they make you look good. I picked Kentucky to win at Florida. I picked them to beat Mississippi State outright. But it would be the most Kentucky thing ever to play at home tomorrow night and lose to South Carolina, even though they've beaten the Gamecocks 4 in a row. But I like this Kentucky team. I think they're built to last. I'm not sure they can beat Georgia, but we'll see. But they're good up front. They've got a great running game. Defensively, they have been a lot more sound this year, and they've got the look of a really solid top 20 type team. Can they keep this momentum going and win tomorrow night to really get their fans fired up and maybe not thinking about basketball, or will they pull a Kentucky and lose at home to South Carolina?
I think they're in a good position to beat South Carolina. I think their offense is really good. I love Benny Snell. You mentioned it, their running game. Benny Snell is at the forefront of that. The wins that they put together are an impressive slate. I mean, 2 wins over ranked teams, I watched Florida last week. I think Florida's a much better team than what you saw against Kentucky. I think Kentucky made them look really bad. And they ran all over that defense, which I get it. I watched Florida against Tennessee last week, and Tennessee was just
brutal.
dreadful. So I get just awful, right? I mean, yeah. I get it. I get it that I'm using that as a gauge. But I think Mississippi State's a quality bunch. I really do. I think it's a quality football team with a good offense. I don't know how good they are in comparison to when to where they were last year when Dan Mullen was there and calling that offense. But Joe Moore has a good offensive mind, and they got held in check pretty good last week against Kentucky's defense. So against two SEC teams, Kentucky has held them to a total of, 23 points?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good. They're off to a pretty good start at both ends. So I think Kentucky is for real. The question is, what does for real mean when it comes to Kentucky football? And does that mean beating Georgia? No, I don't think. I'm with you on that, Gary. I don't think anybody's beat Georgia. I think Georgia's at that point right now where they look more like Alabama than they ever have, where it's that kind of it's almost like a sentient being, like they're just good. They're going to give you like an A-level performance every single week, and you have to be perfect in every aspect to beat them or come close to it. I think Georgia is that good right now. But second best team in the East, I think right now, I think Kentucky's that team. And I know we had a lot of questions. South Carolina, would Tennessee step into that territory this season? Who's going to be that second team right behind Georgia? You know what? I think it's Kentucky. I think they're that good right now. I love their quarterback. I think the way that he has shown off his escapability, his mobility, the legs, the ability to really force defenses into a bind with the +1. I'm a big fan of what Mark Stoops is doing right now.
You mentioned Florida, the Mullen Bowl coming up in Starkville tomorrow night. Mississippi State and Florida. Emotions will be running a little bit high, although I think the Mississippi State fans are really more appreciative of Dan Mullen and what he did there than ticked off that he left. But this is a big game for these two teams. I mean, the winner here still alive in their division. The loser, it's going to be really, really tough. But Mississippi State has the home field advantage coming off that loss to Kentucky. Florida's got a lot of momentum. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I'm really fascinated to see this. I think one thing I really like about Florida is their front. I think they've got depth up front. I really like CeCe Jefferson. I just like the edge guys. Adam Schuler, they moved to the inside, grad transfer from West Virginia. I like guys up front. And I think they did a pretty decent job of getting after Jared Garantano last week. And that's one thing that I would be concerned with. Now, Nick Fitzgerald is a much better runner than Garantano, but edge contained to me, I think is going to be really important for Florida's defense. And then on the other side of the ball, I don't love their running game. I think Scarlett's good. I don't think he's great. Obviously, they're a little banged up. They only had 3 running backs last week because Malik Davis got hurt. I think the receivers are solid. I think Felipe Franks, when given time, is a good quarterback. That's going to be the biggest concern to me, is can Florida hold up front against Mississippi State? Because I haven't seen enough of Mississippi State consistently on defense to really feel like they're a pressure unit and they're really going to focus on getting after the quarterback. That was obviously them under Todd Grantham when he was there last year. I don't see as much pressure, but if that's going to be a factor, I can't imagine there's a scenario where Mississippi State isn't going, well, we got to rush. We got to rush these guys, and we got to send 5 or 6 at different points to make Felipe Franks uncomfortable. Because I think Franks is a decent quarterback. I think he really struggles under pressure, and he was relatively clean for a good chunk of the game against Tennessee last week. So I think Mississippi State at home is probably in good shape. I think Florida wins this by a field goal. I think it's going to be a good, tight, competitive game.
All right, we always just run out of time, which I hate. Short version on the Cubs and the Brewers. The Cubs are a game up, but they've got to finish against the Cardinals, who are still fighting for a wild card. The beer makers have made it tough. They get the Tigers. Clearly a huge difference between winning the division and finishing as the wild card team. How important is it for Chicago to win this division if they want to get to the World Series?
Man, I just came from St. Louis. I just saw the Brewers the last couple of nights on Tuesday and Wednesday, and man, do they look good. They're playing really well right now. The only concern I have for Milwaukee is their starting pitching. because it's not consistent enough, but they've got one of the best bullpens in all of baseball. And their offense right now, Christian Yelich, that's your MVP. And I'm saying that as a Chicago guy who watched Javi Baez blossom this year as an offensive player and still be one of the best defensive infielders in all of baseball. Christian Yelich is the MVP. That guy has had a monster season. Their offense is good. I think it's a huge factor. You have to win the division. If you're the Cubs, you got to win this division because Milwaukee right now, they look really sharp. And you want to put them into a one-game scenario against somebody where they have to throw their guys out of the bullpen. They have to bullpen it a little bit. They have to throw a quality starting pitcher, probably Jhoulys Chacin out there, and maybe get them a loss or make them use a lot of bullpen guys and then throw them into a division series where they're playing a little bit of catch-up with a young manager and Greg Counsell, because I think Milwaukee's got all the pieces, just about all the pieces in place to make a run. And especially in the postseason where your bullpen is so important, they've got as good of a bullpen as anybody in baseball. That is this is what you want. End of the season, it comes down to this: 3 games. I'll be ready just in case there's some tiebreak action on Monday. I'll be on short notice to go call the game on Monday if there's some craziness. This is what you want to see, but I think you got to win the Central if you're the Cubs because the Brewers are coming.
Out of time. Didn't get to touch on Tiger. Didn't get to touch on the Ryder Cup, but Americans won the 4-ball 3-1 down in the alternate shot. And, of course, Tiger's back, even though he and Patrick Reed, the only duo to lose this morning in 4-ball at the Ryder Cup. Great stuff with Adam Amin, as always. Tomorrow night, ESPN 2, 9:30 Central, Arizona and USC. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Thanks, my friend.